Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one! Another one!
Oladipo!
Another one! Huge hole! He's at the 30! He's gonna go! 10, 5, touchdown! Jonathan Taylor!
Galloway finds Rob Finnessy, who fires the three, and
He hit it!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome aboard. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming at you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Jim Coyle with you as always. Dustin Schutte here as well. Another day. It is Tuesday. Of course, we're brought to you by Endeavor Hospitality, all part of the WOW Club. Make sure you go to your Apple App Store or Google Play Store and sign up to become a WOW Club member today. Do that for us. We'd appreciate it, as they are a big sponsor of IU Athletics as well as Indiana Sports Beat, more importantly. So please go and do that, as well as Andy Moore. He is the number one Honda dealer around, baby. Period. How about that? Dustin Schutte with me. We've got a lot to get to. Big announcement. I am decided to become president of the Big Ten Media Division.
Yeah, you only have to do that for like a year, and then you can retire, man.
And then I get a cut. I get 10% of whatever the deal is, and I'm out. That would be 100 million plus.
Yes.
The 10% would be 100 million plus. This is going to be a multi-billion-dollar deal. But guess who it will not include? For the first time in 40 years, you will not be watching Big Ten athletics on ESPN TV.
That's crazy.
Now, don't get confused for our good friends on the REF on ESPN, the REF 97.7 there. That has nothing to do with radio, so don't get afraid. You can still listen to all the IU games right there, right on 97.7. It's always the right call, but you've already got it in the right spot for that. So, but TV wise, yeah, we don't know who is going to be the end partners yet, Dustin. NBC, CBS, the front runners, along with Fox. There's no way that Fox is not right in the middle of this, because number one, they own 61% of BTN, and number two, they're sitting in on the negotiations on behalf of the Big Ten, which never quite understood. It's like bringing in the what's into the hen house.
Yeah, I'm gonna fall short on this analogy probably.
The animal that eats the hens. Anyway, that gets into the hen. A fox into the hen house.
Fox
into
there
the
you
house.
Go. Yeah.
No pun intended. Oh, speaking of which,
did not even
it's
put
like
that
bringing
together.
Well, I did. It just took me a while to get it. The words brought together. But that's like bringing the fox into the hen house. How in the hell is Fox sitting in on the negotiations? I don't understand. I don't understand that. But you will never. One thing you will not see, absolutely, you will not see College Game Day on any Big Ten campus. No Ohio State, Michigan game. No Penn State whiteout. No USC, Michigan. Whatever you want to make it.
Right.
Not going to happen. And that's why. So, but who cares? Do I really care? I personally don't.
No.
ESPN's coverage has been slanted anyway towards whom they cover. So,
right. Well, I don't think it matters as long as you have access to the games. That's all the fans care about. And Fox has amped up its coverage with its pregame show, Big Noon Saturday, or whatever it's called before the Big Noon kickoff. So I think that Fox has already secured its, I mean, it's part of the deal. I think it's already secured its A slot, meaning it gets first dibs on all the big games. So you'll see, I mean, and Fox has made it a point that they're shifting from that primetime spot to putting the biggest game at noon. They've done that the past couple of years now. So,
but that sucks.
I disagree.
No,
But
there's too much going on. I mean, I'm seeing this through different colored lenses because I hate staying up until 11 o'clock, having to write multiple stories, all that stuff. I love when the Big Ten games were done by 8 o'clock, man, those were the best Saturdays. I loved Big Ten football in November because there were so few night games. You're covering multiple.
Uh-huh.
You're covering multiples from one spot where I'm covering one live on location. So it's all different. It's all different needs. So I get it. But see.
What's going to be interesting is if NBC gets in on this deal, if they do lock up, how does that impact? How does that impact Notre Dame? Yeah, exactly.
Few people probably know who that was. That was a very good rendition.
That was.
Hey man, I've got all these old things in my head from seeing clips. Did you know there was I said this yesterday, there was a great, I've got to rewatch it. There was a great special on George Taliaferro on night before last that I watched. And there was something that it just really, I was like, whoa, really? That I learned that was pretty cool. Of course, me being the ADHD me is, even though I thought how cool that was, I'm like, I can't wait to talk about that tomorrow. I couldn't remember what it was and still can't. I've got to go back and rewatch there's this one cool spot, or this one cool thing that I learned. I was even going to say, I can't wait to see Tom Allen. So I bet he doesn't realize this. But I can't remember what it was. But anyway, what a cool guy he was. Make sure you watch that special if you haven't. It was on BTN. Very cool. An hour long. I had never seen it. So it was very cool. Let's see. Tim's having a stroke, thinking IU basketball is losing recruits left and right. Kaiser to Maryland. Now TJ Power, not including IU in his top 5. Can they still get Arrington Page? Well, yeah, I think that they're going to get Arrington Page. They're not going to get all of these guys. They were never going to get all of these guys. TJ Power's not going to Maryland. I mean, you have to remember it's Indiana and then lots of other schools. It's not one school that they're losing to. Yeah, it's just there's a Kaiser. That's not a shock. After once Maryland got the second visit, I thought IU was in great shape if he didn't go back for a second visit. He went back they got him for a second visit. That's never good. I'm like, Yeah. So big deal. I'm not sweating it. Not that it matters to me. I'm just covering it here, but they're going to be fine. Now, Cohen Carr's another one that's going to come out, but they haven't been recruiting him here much. I haven't heard much of him, so I expect. Now, the thing about him is the word is I heard potentially that he could end up at Michigan State. Now, if he ends up at Michigan State, along with Xavier Booker, Draw Gibbs Lawhorn, I've heard his potential interest there. Tom Izzo could backdoor his way into an incredible class.
Yeah.
I mean, a really good class. And just kind of, that's why you guys got to, wanting to know information is understandable, but you cannot hang on it. You can't think that it's done. You think this and think that there's no way that it'll go someplace else, because that's simply not the case. And you have to wait. You also don't know what's going on with the recruiting. So it's not, Indiana's not, recruiting is not falling apart. There are other schools out there
Right.
that have had more success than IU's had of late.
Right. I mean, and that makes a huge difference. And as we talked about yesterday with Charlie Miller, there's a lot of different factors that go involved into this. Indiana's got a lot of returning players. Mike Woodson has gone into the transfer portal. So there's not as, there may not be that same allure as to go to a Maryland where, I can guarantee you playing time. I can guarantee that you're going to get on the floor 15 to 20 minutes per game. That's probably not going to happen immediately at Indiana. And I don't know that, to be honest with you, I don't know that that's the message Mike Woodson wants to send, considering his kind of mentality about everybody competing for minutes and everybody competing for the starting job. So, I mean, different things appeal to different players. You can't sweat it right now. I've said it before. I've heard other coaches say it, like recruiting is not picking. You don't just get to say, okay, I want this guy, this guy, this guy, and then they magically appear on your campus. I don't think it's a tough road ahead. In the Big Ten, there's a lot of really good Big Ten teams out there. I mean, obviously, Michigan State's still going to play at a high level. Tom Izzo wants that second national championship. Maryland's undergoing some changes. Michigan's got Juwan Howard. Illinois, Brad Underwood's done an outstanding job. So it's not easy to recruit right now. So if you can, but I think that what Mike Woodson is doing is he's kind of setting that foundation. Whether or not you get those kids or not, you're establishing relationships, you're establishing pipelines. Maybe you miss out on this kid, but maybe you're able to get a kid a year or two down the road because you're able to establish that pipeline, or you're able to get some familiarity with some different coaches or families, whatever the case might be. So just take a deep breath. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Indiana's in a better spot than they were 2 years ago. That's for sure. So things are looking up.
So you've got offers out to Arrington Page. Obviously, TJ Power can be taken off that list. I think you can take Cohen Carr off the list. There's offers to people that people don't even remember. Isaiah Collier, London Johnson, Draven Gibb Lawhorn, of course. But now he's listed as Montverde. Is he switching to Montverde this upcoming season?
I don't know. Could be.
I did not know that, if that was the case. You've got Gabe Cups and Jakai Newton coming in already. So, let's see. Freddie DeLeon is another offer that's out there for a shooting guard. Let's see. Small forward. No, he's committed. Stojakovic is still uncommitted, it looks like. Even though he's out in Cali, and I don't expect to see them. But does the USC thing change that? But yeah, there's just plenty out there. Deshaun Harris-Smith, that's not looking good from what it sounds like. So there you go. What do they get? Someone said that they only have two open spots. Actually, they have 3 to open up for next season that they could use. They don't have to. Let's see. How's everybody doing? Today is Taco Tuesday. We ought to start making tacos Tuesday.
Ooh. Can you do like a breakfast taco or a breakfast burrito?
My man JD at BB's probably jumping right on that.
There we go.
Absolutely. we'll definitely talk to him about that as soon as we go out there. Whenever I make it able to make it out there. Looking forward to that. Absolutely, that's one of my favorite things in the world, though. I just don't ever keep. I just don't ever keep the wraps at home.
Have you? I went to when I was in Austin. There's a place called I think it's called Torchio's. Oh my God, the best breakfast tacos you've ever. They put a little chorizo on there. Now you're gonna have heartburn after you eat it. That's for sure. But I was never a huge breakfast burrito, breakfast taco type of guy. And then I had it out in Austin. It makes a huge difference when you get that kind of quality.
Speaking of Austin, IU Media Relations, Jeremy Rosenthal, he's been great to me over the years. But he's heading to Austin now to join their media relations staff. IU is now going to have, I think he's going to be head of women's there, which is a big deal. But then you've also got, let's see, Greg Kincaid is the head of football media relations over at Penn State. Nate is down at Arizona as head of basketball media relations. And Scott Burns is head of Memphis' basketball media relations. All that has happened within the last 3, maybe 4 years. People have gone on, so that's a pretty good deal. We've got to take a break. The great Mike DeCourcy coming up next from the Sporting News. See what all he got to talk about. Plenty more with the Big Ten media rights deal, of course, is I heard that he gets 20% of whatever deal they cut. So that's part of his BTN deal, man. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Media Radio, brought to you by our good friends from Courtroom Sports Grill, all a part of the WOW Club. Courtroom Sports Grill located down in Bedford. Make sure you stop by. A great place to catch a game or just meet friends for lunch. Back with the great Mike DeCourcy right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Whether you're visiting. Hello, Michael.
What's going on, Jim?
I was not ignoring you. By the time I got around to that text, it was too late. So I'm like, I'll call him tomorrow.
Okay.
What are you wearing?
I'm trying to read that shirt too.
It says Kennebunkport.
Is that a soccer thing?
No, it's Kennebunkport, Maine, man.
See, you actually know. See, if it was soccer, you wouldn't have known, though. That's the thing.
But all I saw was that K, and that font looks very, very familiar.
You thought it was Krzyzewski.
No.
Is that what you're saying?
Worse than that.
Oh, UK. Oh, okay. Yeah. No, it's definitely Maine.
That's a font that I've seen them use before.
And they make good T-shirts up in Maine because I haven't been there since 2011, so this is hanging in.
Hey, I have, or my daughter now has it. She used to sleep in it. I still have the first sweatshirt I ever bought. The first place I went to on campus at IU at the TIS bookstore at the TIS bookstore over on 3rd Street. I mean, and it's it's got the holes in the sleeves right there now, but it's a champion.
We got to be donating that to the museum, like at Cook Hall or something.
Nothing beats Champion products, man. They were the greatest. I love them. As a matter of fact, I've got a Champion pullover hoodie, and that thing must weigh 10 pounds. I'm like, good Lord, this thing's heavy.
Isn't that what John Daly used to wear too? Those Champion pullovers, windbreakers.
I don't know, but I had your pictures pop up from years ago. Well, this was the PGA in Louisville in Valhalla, not 214, and I picture John Daly. Man, he was in white shirt, lime green pants. Wish I could find that one. Oh, what is new with you, Mr. Mike?
Not a lot. How about you?
Just football, having to get out there, learning nothing.
Love football practice.
Loving every second of it that I don't get to see. which I have seen nothing.
Well, I covered Penn State under Paterno for 9 years, so I never saw a football practice during all that time. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. They wouldn't let you do anything.
Wow.
Yes. And
all right, here we go.
All right.
Basketball, football, and plenty more. Simply go to thehoosier.com and sign up. It's free. You can also find full episodes of Indiana Sports Beat Radio on the homepage or on the station every week, Monday through Friday. If we're not on a station where you live, we should be. Ask for Indiana Sports Beat Radio. This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It is a Tuesday, and welcome again, Mike DeCourcy, as always. Dustin Schutte's with us. Southern Stone. Make sure you stop by at Patterson and Rogers and check out that delicious Southern fare. Part of the WOW Club as well. Mike, how are you doing, sir?
I'm well, Jim. And just to clear it up, for anybody who's coming in late, it says Kennebunkport, not Kentucky. So we're still neutral here, except I had a really nice day when I drove to Kennebunkport a while back. So,
I've been to a lot of different places in this country. I tried to do it when I was young because I'm like, you never know. I'm like, man, I was anywhere I could go, I went. Lucky when I was in TV, I had a job up in the upper north and then out the northwest, and then rodeo, and I got to go to the southwest and just here and there and the southeast. I've never been. I've been to the northeast, but Providence, New York, but I've never been to Kennebunkport and Martha's Vineyard and those kind of places. And I really want to go because that's one of the, other than North Dakota, which I'm like, probably not. I definitely want to go to that area because it's a different experience. It's an experience you can't get. And maybe Charleston. Our good friend Mitchell Page lives down in Charleston. I've not been to Charleston, and I know that is just such a beautiful, beautiful area.
Yeah, I've not been to Charleston either, but we took a vacation about a decade ago up to, we stayed in a town called Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which was lovely. We had a really nice time there. We took a drive up to Maine on one of the days and walked around and took a boat ride, a lobster boat ride out where they catch lobster and stuff. And so that was really cool. And then we walked around to see the Bush compound. I suppose they still own it, but when we were there, both the Bushes were alive, both the senior Bushes, Barbara and George H.W. Yes, Herbert. Yeah. George H.W., the first Bush president. So they were still around then. We did not see them because you can't get that close, but we did see their house. So it was nice. I would highly recommend Maine for at least a day. I'm sure there's much more to do than you can do in a day, but we had a lovely day.
I saw George H.W. Bush speak at Market Square Arena.
Wow.
When I was in college. What do those both have in common? Neither of them are both here any longer.
You're true. You got a point. I wasn't going there though. That's for you to say.
Too soon.
No. Too soon. There you go.
No, but that was cool seeing I was in college and I'm like, wow. I remember going up there and doing that. But beer and soccer beer. IU is going to sell beer at IU men's and women's soccer. They're selling it at football. They're selling it in baseball and soccer already, but not in Assembly Hall. Not to the common man in Assembly Hall. And I don't know what they're waiting for. I don't know what Purdue has been selling it in Mackey for at least 3 seasons. And so I don't know what they're waiting for. Who cares that you're going to sell it? No offense, but Who cares that you're going to sell it at women's soccer and women's softball? You're not the sales is almost not even worth the problem. You're going to have to, if you have to put taps and that kind of stuff in. But I don't understand, what the heck are they waiting for in this day and age, especially with the money situation? Why are they not putting it in? I mean, why are people going to get more inebriated in Assembly Hall than they would at, say, Memorial Stadium?
That's an oddity to me coming from where I do. I covered college athletics for about 15 years, give or take, by the time I moved to Cincinnati. And man, they'd had the taps running the minute I walked in the door in 1997. Go to Xavier, they got beer. You go to UC, the Bearcats, they had beer. They had beer for football. They had beer for men's basketball. I don't know if they had it for soccer. They didn't have a lot of people for soccer, so it didn't really matter. That's why they don't have soccer anymore. But it's just so natural in Cincinnati. It's part of the landscape. So that it's sort of still new in some other places strikes you as odd coming from there, because it is really part of the culture there. Heavily German influenced city. So I don't know the difference. I don't understand the difference between football and basketball. It doesn't, it doesn't seem to register to me. If you're going to all the other sports, why would you not make it universal? I don't understand that.
Now, I don't either. Now, part of it is, I guess, they would just have to make certain beer stands, because a lot of the concession stands are, I think, manned by volunteers from Boy Scouts and yada yada, trying to make money. But you just have certain stands. I think that's exactly what they do at football. They just have a separate beer truck or whatever.
Yeah. Lots of places do that. We'll have separate booths. They have a fridge behind, stocked with cans, mostly cans, because they don't like, obviously, people that have bottles. In a lot of cases, and a lot of places sell you bottled water. Take your lid, because they don't want you to be able to throw it and all that. So it wouldn't be that unusual to just, like I said, find the hall space to put up a few stands with a fridge behind them, where you could keep the beer cold and sell it out of there. So I honestly don't know, and it's their money, and I don't get it. But again, like I said, coming from Cincinnati, where I lived for 18 years, and it just was part of the background at that point. And they didn't have any more instances than any other, sporting event I've covered. I mean, I've been to every major arena in the country just about, and some had it and some don't. And there haven't been any more instances in college basketball arenas that sold it or didn't. Those things don't happen that often. And when they do, they aren't always alcohol infused. Sometimes they're just, rivalry infused.
Well, Jennifer makes a good point, Dustin, that one needs alcohol at an IU football game. Well, it's not such the case at a basketball game.
That's true. I mean, here's the other thing is, a lot of people are saying in the comments that because of the balcony, those stairs, and I can attest to that, because I'm walking up those stairs. There's no hand railing. I walk up there. I look like Bambi, like just learning to get his footing up there. My legs are shaking. My stomach's
I would need 6 beers to go sit up there.
I'm afraid of heights. So I was like I'm crawling up the steps trying to get up to my seat at Assembly Hall. So that's actually a good point.
Well, that may be why. I don't know.
No beer. If you're in the balcony, no beer for you. No beer for you.
Only sell it to the people in the good seats. There you go.
But yeah, it's I'm just surprised, especially with what is a money. I don't want to say a money crunch, because we're getting ready to talk about millions of dollars coming in, and maybe I don't know if that prevents them from holding off, because they're like, But I just think that I don't know what the money would be. They obviously do. They've done the numbers, so they know exactly what increase in revenue that would mean. I don't know
Funny
how much.
Story about that, Jim. when the University of Cincinnati hired a president in the early 2000s, she went to the athletic director, the late Bob Goyne, who was a wonderful man and did a terrific job at UC. Really miss him. And said she wanted to get rid of beer at the sporting events, at men's basketball, football. And so he, circled the revenue thing. And I know that it was 7 figures. I don't remember what the exact number was, but he circled the revenue item on what they make from selling beer at the basketball and football games at UC. And it was a 7-figure thing. And he said, okay, if we can make this up, it's fine with me. And that was the end of it. They never talked about it again, because not easy to just crank out $1 million, especially 20 years ago.
I mean, can you imagine the money made at Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, Tennessee, any stadium that's 85, 90 and above? Holy smokes.
Let me tell you, if there's one fan base that doesn't need beer in the stadium, it's Tennessee football. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
That's because they've got a flask full of Tennessee whiskey.
I can't imagine what would be thrown on the field. We saw mustard and golf balls and all kinds of stuff in that Ole Miss game last year. I can't imagine what else. But I don't know. I've never understood it from on a serious perspective why it was such a big deal. I remember going to the Big Ten tournament in 2016, maybe at then Bankers Life Fieldhouse, and they didn't even sell beer for that. And that was a neutral stadium. Maybe it was something to do with the partnerships with the restaurants around town. I don't really know, but it's just always been one of those weird things that I've never quite understood.
I think some of it has to do with the idea that it's odd to sell it when half the players on the floor are not legally allowed to drink it. And it's that, it seemed like from an optics standpoint, it was a little odd. And I understood that. I mean, like I said, I lived that because I thought that was everywhere until I moved to Cincy and found out that, they weren't sweating those optics at all.
Right.
Hudipole, baby. Hudipole. Ertles 92. Cincinnati is Cincinnati Pittsburgh too, and you're very familiar with both, but would those two be considered the two, especially back in the day, beer places, centralized? And Louisville was a little bit too, because they're on the river, but those two may really come to mind with beer.
It was really much more, obviously they drink it in Pittsburgh. I'm not pretending that they don't, but it was really more a part of the scene in Cincinnati than it was in my 30 years in Pittsburgh. Like I said, they drink beer in Pittsburgh like they drink it everywhere else. And they had local beers like Iron City, etc. But Cincinnati, it was a cultural thing. As I said, Cincinnati, the foundation of Cincinnati was heavily German, and obviously beer is a very important part of the culture in Germany. And so I think that's, so for that standpoint, it really was more a part of the culture when I lived in Cincinnati than all the years I lived in Pittsburgh. Like Memphis has barbecue, Pittsburgh has, they have the Pittsburgh. It was the proverbial shot in the beer for the mill workers back in the day. But Cincinnati, beer was an important part, and is an important part of the culture.
Yeah, before Prohibition, Cincinnati was the one of the leading beer producing cities in the country.
And during, I took a Prohibition tour one time, like a walking tour. During Prohibition, it was one of the leading cities too. I can tell you that based on what I learned.
I was going to say they probably became the leading city during Prohibition.
Yes.
That's funny. But yeah, just from my youth, I know going there, man. I remember going to Riverfront when I was a kid in the late 70s, and God, you talk about hot. That place was hot. But it was just then. All I remember is Hudipole and Ertles signs everywhere. in Louisville. It was Fall City. Those old beer companies back in the day, which is I still think is kind of cool. But we were thinking yesterday, as a matter of fact, the oldest taverns in America. I can't remember who I was talking about that with, but I believe Rhode Island is where the oldest tavern in America is. West Lafayette has got Indiana's oldest tavern. It's pretty cool. But the one in Rhode Island goes back to before we were a country. I think it's like the 1600s.
There you go. Just like
I'm sure
Kennebunkport was 1653. So we're on theme here.
So 653. So they were kind of behind. It took them 11 years after we landed. What was the?
I don't know. I don't know the history of New England that well.
Wasn't that far away. I guess those wagons were slow rolling. Hey, we got Mike DeCourcy with us, man, and lots more to get to. The media rights for the Big Ten. What's that going to be like? It's going to be different. I can promise you that. We'll talk about that and much more with Mike DeCourcy and Dustin Schutte right here on Indiana Sports Beat, brought to you by our good friends at Metalworks Brewing Company, part of the WOW Network. Metalworks is a culmination of passion for beer, food, and custom metal art alongside a desire to be actively involved with the Bloomington community. Located right off the square in Bloomington on 6th Street, former Function Brewery. Stop in and say hello. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
The sun is out. Yes, Tim, and the first tumbleweed location should have been next to a dumpster.
I'm genuinely surprised that
that is the
so many of those locations still around.
Awfulest, worst food in the history of restaurants. It's a Mexican
tumbleweed
chain.
Is the Nickelback of restaurants.
It's not even Nickelback. Nickelback had a hit song.
Who are you?
Oh, this restaurant is. I'm from the Southern Indiana area, and tumbleweed
is
I'm
from too.
And
they're in Louisville too.
A Tex-Mex kind of a chain that's been around since I was in high school.
Okay.
And back then, wasn't a lot. So, and I didn't have a palate, so we didn't know. We were stupid. That stuff is god awful. I grew up, and I'm like, this is terrible.
I think the only reason people still like it is because they do like Margarita Wednesdays or something. I don't know.
Yeah, we used to go there on Thursdays because they'd give you all the free chips and salsa you want for the game, or Monday nights for the games, and yeah. But it was terrible.
Now they all
Still
have.
terrible.
I don't know if you've been recently, Jim, but they have.
Are you kidding me? Recently, as in what? The last 30 years?
No, like in the last probably 5 years. They all wear shirts that say "Need the Weed?" on them now.
Hey, that's smart marketing. That's the smartest thing they've done in 30 years. I'll tell you that. They should probably put that effort into altering their menu. Not that I have to worry about it. Big Ten media deal, rights deal, man. How's Fox, who's sitting in on the negotiations? I don't understand that aspect of it, Mike, and that's one of the things I was going to ask about it, because I'm like going, and no pun intended, but I'm like, isn't that bringing the fox into the hen house?
I have to be honest with you. That's a bit conflicted for me. I mean, I work for them, so.
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
And two, I don't know. I don't really understand the how that works.
Yeah, because I can't tell if Fox is still going to be, or are they looking to like CBS and NBC, or is that going to be the lead?
15.
And
well, Fox is going to still have the noon game, and they're still going to that. I can tell you for sure. They're still going to have Big Noon. And
here we go, guys.
The all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by BB's Market in Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It is Tuesday here from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, and it's going to be a lot cooler out there today, man. It was warm out at the Memorial Stadium yesterday. I was like, whoo, I'm glad I was not wearing a helmet and pads, baby, because it was a warm one. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News with us as always, as is Dustin Schutte. Big news, no Big Ten media rights deal that is kind of looks like it's coming down to the end. And the big news out yesterday, looks like ESPN out of the picture for the first time in 40 years, which I don't know why people are surprised at this. First of all, I'm like, I don't know how it really worked the other way when they have a vested interest in the SEC and that juggernaut of a league. Fox obviously owns 61% of the BTN, so they have a vested interest in the Big Ten. And they were sitting in on negotiations, I believe, with CBS, NBC. We don't know which way that's going to go. There's two schools of thought there. Either way, you're going to have network coverage, which is pretty damn cool. But Dustin brought up earlier, let's say it happened to be NBC, Mike. What does that potentially do to furthering a relationship with Notre Dame into the Big Ten?
Oh, the plan has always been I don't claim to have done the reporting on this myself, so I'm going to credit people like John Orand at
Wall Street Journal. Was the Wall Street Journal?
No, he's at the American City Business Journal, the Sports Business Journal, and Michael McCarthy from Front Office Sports, people like that have done the reporting on this. Both of them former colleagues, by the way, great reporters. They have said that NBC's plan has always been to make it a Big Ten Notre Dame doubleheader. Most often it would be Notre Dame in the afternoon because they like to play those 2:30 kickoffs. That's what they've traditionally done. They don't want they want Notre Dame in that window, and then they would play Big Ten at night. Exactly when they kick it off, probably 7, something like that. That's what their plan has been all along. They wouldn't be earlier because that's going to be the Fox window. Fox has done really well in that noon window with the games that they've had. They call it the Big Noon. Most often they've had Big 12 and Big 10 in that window. In the past, I think it would now be more leaning toward, although I can't say for sure. I don't know what their plans are relative to the Big 12. It's clear that they're going to have a heavy Big 10 influence in that noon window. So that wouldn't be affected. So if NBC does get rights, I'm fairly certain that it will be for primetime Saturday games. That's where their window will be. And they still want Notre Dame. I don't think there's any question that NBC does not want to be out of the Notre Dame business. However, I firmly believe this, that if NBC wants to stay in the Notre Dame business, the days of the bargain Irish are over. I mean, they've been getting a good deal on Notre Dame based on what numbers we're seeing now. They've been getting a good deal, and it's going to have to go up if they want Notre Dame to stay independent. They're going to have to make it worth the Irish's while, because the Irish will know what it pays to be in the Big Ten, because the money is right there. Everybody will see in a week or so, or 2 weeks, or whenever exactly this thing closes. Okay, do some division. It's not going to take much. The iPhone's not going to have to work that hard. Divide this number by 16, and it's going to come in way above what Notre Dame has been getting. I think Notre Dame will settle for less than that number, but I don't think it's going to be a lot less. I mean, it's not going to be half. I don't think Notre Dame would do that, because as much as they want to remain independent, they have to do the thing that makes economic sense. And so if they can stay independent at 75 cents on the dollar or something like that, I think they'll do that. But if it starts to get down to 45 or 50 cents, then I just don't know that they can feel competitive with the SEC and Big Ten while making that much less.
I think, and this is only an opinion, and I am not a Kelly School grad, so math is not my friend. But right now, I believe that Notre Dame is getting in the neighborhood of 33 to 35 million.
No, it's less than that. Yeah, everything I've read it's less than that.
Wow,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I haven't read anything over 25,
and that's low. And I thought that was low. Holy smokes! So they've lost millions upon millions of dollars. The next Big Ten deal expected to be $100 million. That's without UCLA and USC. With them, that I would imagine that goes to 125 maybe. And
here's interesting, Jim. Every time I see a report, the number goes up, and I'm not talking about month after month after month. I'm talking about this day, end of this week, middle of next week. It seems to go up. So I don't know where we're going to land. But it keeps those reports keep escalating.
Especially when you're adding the Los Angeles TV market, which is not included in this particular one already. And so if you were to add that and Notre Dame, I can easily see that going to 150, at which point Notre Dame at a premium is going to be giving up half.
Yeah, I mean, if it does indeed go to that, like I said, I don't know that's where we'll end up. I don't know. I know that they were talking $100 million per school back in the spring before we knew that this was going to happen with the two California schools. I know they were talking about that, but we don't know that's where it would have ended up. That's a pretty handy number for a report that we're shooting for that, or somebody whispers to John or Michael, that's what they're whispering, that's what they think it's going to be. But we never really know until it's finally done. But I do think that if and this is just an opinion. It's not, I haven't talked to anybody at Notre Dame, but I do think if NBC goes up to 75, I think they can feel comfortable there because they get some money from ACC for the rest of their sports, for basketball and women's basketball, et cetera. I think they could probably feel comfortable at that, even if they're giving up a big chunk of money by not joining the Big Ten. I think they can, but I just don't think they can if NBC just doubles what's been reported as the previous figure. I don't think they can eat that much. It's just so much money to leave on the table.
Well, why would they? When I know you've talked about how much they value their independence. They've had it the entire time, and they're holding on to it till death. And I get that, but the football team's already playing a chunk of the schedule. Now you're adding USC into it. I don't know what they're really losing. Well, they can still play the academies with their non-con games, sure. So they're really not losing anything. It's gigantic gains upon gains upon gains that could be for the student athletes and the students and the university in a whole. There are elements of Notre Dame tradition that I really understand and deeply appreciate because I grew up in an Irish Catholic household. The first football game I remember watching was, I believe it was 67, might have been 68. Notre Dame, Purdue, Leroy Keys and Mike Phipps against Terry Hanratty and Jim Seymour. I remember that as being the first game that really mattered to me in my household. And so I grew up in that. And so I get the Four Horsemen and Touchdown Jesus and all that, but I've never quite understood the fixation here. I mean, Five left comments and says, as a Notre Dame fan, I want them to remain independent. But why? I mean, what do you get out of it? Exactly.
Especially in an era when conference championships, you can put up a trophy. I mean, there's no trophy for beating Navy or beating all your ACC opponents. I mean,
when every other athletic team that Notre Dame has belongs to a conference.
Yes. Big Ten in hockey, ACC in just about every other sport, men's hockey. I'm not sure whether they have a women's team and where they play if they do, but
How about the
AAC
AAC in men's soccer?
Is that where they are? No, they're in the ACC. They were before they joined the.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah, they're in the ACC for men's soccer.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Kentucky.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
Kentucky is in the AAC of. AAC of all places.
Yeah,
for soccer.
They were in Conference USA for a while, I think, for men's soccer because the SEC doesn't have any other soccer teams in men's. So they are in conferences for everything else, but I don't. I will admit that I don't know. Will the ACC Big Ten Challenge still be on ESPN?
Will it happen?
Will it happen is really a question because that's been a Big Ten event. And so that's been an ESPN event. They've owned it. They've arranged all the matchups. That's why we've talked before about why the Hoosiers always get, when they've been good or not great, they still get Duke or Carolina because they're a great draw for ESPN. For their ratings, so they keep, they gave the Hoosiers some tough matchups over the years for that reason. They've won some of them too, but that's so I don't know that we'll still have that. The Big Ten may need to search for another partner, or they would have to, perhaps talk to the ACC about staging that where they would share it. Right. Where ESPN and Fox or ESPN and BTN or ACC Network and BTN, however you'd want to do it.
I think you just broadcast whoever has the home game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But you'd have to arrange at that point you'd have to arrange your own series because right now that game has been arranged. Those games have been arranged by ESPN since they founded it.
Well, if people think things like that are not going to go away, forget that. When you have Oklahoma, Nebraska going away, and Texas A&M going away, these are just made for TV events. They'll create more.
It's replaceable. Absolutely. It can be done. And it could be, you could do what I just said, which is split it up and each side get their home games on their own preferred network. I think the interesting thing about this, if indeed it's true that ESPN will no longer be in the Big Ten business and vice versa. In the late 90s, early 2000s, when the Pac-12 went all Fox, there were a lot of complaints. I'm trying to remember the exact time frame. That it's all kind of running together now, but I remember Lute Olson being bothered. So it must have been a little later. It must have been in the mid 2000s or that you started to get complaints from Fox, from Pac-12 coaches like Ben Howland and Lute Olson, the late Lute Olson at the time, who were complaining about their recruits not getting to see enough of their games. I think we're probably past that now, but it'll be interesting to see whether that becomes a talking point at least. I think we're past the point where, now that you have FS1 and you have Big Fox being very willing to put games on its air, both with the Big East and the Big Ten in the last several years. I think we're probably past the point where it has any impact on the spread of your brand in any particular sport. I think the Big Ten will get plenty of exposure no matter what network they're on now, that they'll be able to continue to thrive in the sports that they've done well in. Now, obviously, men's basketball being very prominent in that area.
Well, just look at, you don't have to look really much further than the NFL. And I think that I think they kind of set the standard in terms of they're getting multiple partners. What do they got? NBC, CBS, Fox, ESPN, Amazon. There might be another partner in there. I'm not sure, but I think what ESPN has, just the Monday Night Football game, I think. So they're a limited partner. Now that's a big time broadcast. Obviously you get a lot of eyeballs on Monday Night Football, but at the same time, I think the Big Ten said, you know what, if the NFL can survive with minimal ESPN involvement, we can also survive. And they were able to lock up potentially multiple partners. I think I read that story from the Sports Business Journal last night that ESPN isn't quite out of it. And I think Amazon or Apple they're still trying to get something done so they can get in on this. So I know Kevin Warren has taken a ton of grief during his short run as the commissioner of the Big Ten, but this is an incredibly well done deal. And I think his experience coming from the NFL probably helps in this regard.
I think that I wonder if the people who slammed him when he'd literally been on, think about this. You start a job. It's a highest profile job you could ever imagine having, just about. And you start this job, and 2 months later, the COVID-19 pandemic hits. I mean, he'd been January, February, I got to cancel the men's and women's basketball tournaments. That's how his career as the Big Ten president started. And everybody attacked him when the fall came and, originally canceled football. And then ultimately it was restored. And anyone who understands the league understands that there was a lot of presidential involvement in how that all went down. Ultimately, it worked itself out. They had a season. They had some games canceled. They were able to get a lot done. They were able to get a team in the playoff. They were able to get a team in the playoff in the final. They followed that with another, dominant basketball regular season. So I think he's done a good, solid job. And now with what's happening now, he's doing some revolutionary things that are adding significantly to the revenue base. And that's what his primary job is, to conduct, clean, honest competition, to make sure that that's the priority at a high level, the highest level the school can contain, with real student athletes, and to make as much money as possible from all of that. And I think that he has fulfilled those missions. He's done some really cool things off the field, the trip to Selma, the various mental health initiatives that he's had. I think he's done some really cool things that aren't revenue producing. But then when you say, okay, that's nice, but what have you done for us financially? Well, he's going to be able to drop the bag on the table and say, there you go.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like I said, he took a lot of grief. I think people, and I'll take some of the blame on this too, because I didn't think when the season was canceled in 2020, he did a very good job explaining how some of the things changed between the schedule and the cancellation of the season. But I think that there was a lot of, he still works for the presidents, right? He's the guy that falls on the sword and takes a lot of the blame, when it was primarily what I think 11 or 12 of the presidents had voted to not have a season. At that point, his hands were basically tied. He had to answer to those people. So I agree with you. I've been very impressed with what he's done, maybe over the last especially 6 months to a year. And I know he's taken some grief on the other side of, you turned on the alliance, whatever that was supposed to be. You stole from the Pac-12. But I mean, this is a ruthless business too. We've seen Greg Sankey did the same thing, but for whatever reason, Greg Sankey seems to get a lot of the credit and Kevin Warren seems to get a lot of the grief.
Can't disagree with that. Mike, what's up next for you, man?
Got an article today. This is a book that I was sent called The Barcelona Complex. It is, if you like soccer, it is a fabulous book about FC Barcelona and Lionel Messi, the greatest player of our lifetimes, and how everything operates in this very unique club. And right now we are 5 days away from the start of the primary, the first division in Spain, colloquially called La Liga. And they still can't put their roster together because they're so far over budget. Basically, they have a sort of salary cap in Spain. You can only spend like 70% of your revenue on players, something like that. And they've signed all these players in the offseason, and now they're trying reportedly to move some of the players that on their roster that they don't want anymore out, but they're getting paid. The players are getting paid too much money for anybody to want them. And so they can't put it's a real mess. So anyway, got an article with the author of that, Simon Cooper, He did a magnificent job on the book. And so that article should be out this morning. And then I'm also going to write for tomorrow about the talk by the Florida Gulf Coast president. Remember Dunk City from 2013 saying that he thinks that automatic bids will go away. I think it's basically just kind of a threat, a warning. If I don't think it's real that's necessarily going to happen, but he's kind of sounding the warning that could be next or down the road as an impact of all the conference expansion and such. I don't think that's accurate, but we'll discuss it in that column for Wednesday morning.
We'll look forward to that. Make sure you give Mike a follow and make sure you're a subscriber to the Sporting News for complete coverage from Mike DeCourcy. Mike, I cannot thank you enough, sir, as always.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Dustin.
The great Mike DeCourcy joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat, along with Dustin Schutte. We've got lots more coming up next. Brought to you by our friends from School Courier, part of the WOW Network. Make sure you go to your Apple App Store or Google Play Store and sign up today. Start earning WOW rewards. Whether it's from Southern Stone, Courtroom, Sports Grill, Feast, wherever. They are a supporter of Value Athletics and Indiana Sports Beat. Most importantly of all, support those who support you. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Andy Moore Honda.
Hey, Jim, I meant to ask this earlier. That spot that you sent me, is that meant to be in our regular ad rotation, or am I sending that to the ref?
To the ref.
Now, and I noticed it was multiple cuts. Is that just one that I need to choose from, or does that need to be separated? Or
yes, just choose from one. I think the second one was definitely better than the first one, and I didn't listen to the third one.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying. I heard the second one. I'm like, okay, that's good enough. This, and whether the third one's better or not, I don't know. But the first one is not. First one is not good enough.
Sounds good. Excuse me. Hopefully they'll be sending us some of their ads again, because they pulled their ads back at the beginning of the summer, understandably so. But I know it's about time for.
I wish to God I had somebody to sell flipping ads there. Yeah, I can't talk about that now. I forgot. So. All right, so
you'll have about 10 minutes here before we break again for Chronic. And I'm going to, as soon as we come back from break, I'm going to hop out for a couple minutes, but I'll text you when I'm back in front of the computer.
Gotcha.
Oh, shoot. The sex people are at it again in the comments. I got them blocked. It's fine. Because I saw Tebow say, JTP, you trying to hook Jim up. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I went up in the comments and I saw the. All right, here we go.
Of experience, and that could be the difference in you getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty at Cheryl@IndyHomePros.com or 317-298-0961. Cheryl Sizemore from Remax Advanced Realty. Let Cheryl Sizemore get you in the home you want today. Cheryl@IndyHomePros.com.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back. It is Tuesday. Jim Coyle with you as always. Dustin Schutte here as well. Hope your day is going well. It's going to be cooler today. Man, it was warm here yesterday and humid. Had a front come through last night. If there were storms and showers, I did not get to hear them. I have not gotten to hear a good storm all summer, man. I'm like missing it. I want to hear one.
Does it help you sleep? Helps me sleep.
Well, if I'm hearing it, it can't help me sleep because that means I'm awake. But
well, it soothes you. You get that sound.
I know. I love it. Like I said, I'm missed. Yeah, I miss it. 81 for a high here today. How about them apples?
See, there's always that yesterday. There's always that one day in like early August that kind of sets
77 on Sunday.
Then maybe that's the day. There's always one day a few weeks before the start of the football season where it's nice and cool, gets you in that fall, gets that fall weather feel going. Apparently Sunday's the day. 77. Well,
it's back-to-back 70. This has been the nicest summer one of the nicest summers I can just simply recall. Weather-wise, there's not been much hot weather. Not terribly hot. I got news for you. And the humidity has not been terrible at all either. I'm like, wow, here and there. But, when I was in school, I had to walk uphill both ways in the snow, with no shoes. And
it was miserable.
But, yeah, we may be getting some storms through here later on and throughout all of central Indiana. Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, boom, baby. That's coming soon. But by the time we get done.
The interesting thing about the ESPN stuff, and I'm jumping away from the weather really quick, is that Bob Chapek, who's the president or CEO or whatever he is of Disney,
is an IU graduate.
And Michigan State. He got his master's or whatever from Michigan State. So he's a 2-time Big Ten grad, and he's going to let the Big Ten walk away from the table.
Yeah, that would be, that would have to be hard to take. But what are they going to do? I mean, they would have to basically double down. There's no way you're going to have. And why, again, all right, Mike works for BTN, which is owned by Fox. So there are certain questions I didn't really want to ask him. It wouldn't have been fair. But how in the hell is ESPN had no chance? I don't see how. Why would Fox work with ESPN? It's a direct competitor to them,
right? More
so than NBC and CBS are. So why would they? I mean, I never expected this to be. I'm just surprised why they're surprised. Who the hell did people think Fox was going to want to work with?
Right. I don't know. I mean, that Fox has been coming after the Big Ten in a big way for a couple of years now. Ever since they wanted to launch that big noon kickoff, I think they knew that there was a market. ESPN and ABC had dominated the evening games. CBS's big SEC game, sometimes it's at night, but a lot of times it's the 3:30 kickoff. Those were the 2 time slots that ESPN and CBS had dominated. So Fox came in and wanted to do noon and steal that market. And they've done an excellent job. And they knew that some of the biggest names, some of the biggest draws would be from the Big Ten, because you've got Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Nebraska, Michigan State. You've got so many big time draws, and it's been successful for them. So I think they see the value in the Big Ten, and you're right. Why would you want to give ESPN any of it? You want to drive that price tag up. That's why Fox now has the biggest share. They've got the A selection. They get all the big primetime games. And then obviously we'll see what if it's CBS and NBC, we'll see what they come away with. But Fox's goal, I think, was to shut out ESPN from the Big Ten as much as possible.
Why wouldn't you? I mean,
right, exactly. I mean, Fox isn't getting
in conversation so many times because why would ESPN have College Game Day at a Big Ten game? They're not going to promote that game because it's not on their network. So it's just long ago became what it is. But before I forget, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to do something else.
I was just going to say, it's not like Fox is getting any of the SEC stuff or the ACC stuff. So if Fox can dominate the Big Ten, has some of the largest alumni base, some of the biggest fan support. They're home of the biggest stadiums. They get the biggest turnout year after year. I know that in terms of winning national championships, the SEC does dominate. There's no question about that. But the Big Ten it's probably the bigger draw. It's got the more notable names. It's got more recognizable brands, in my opinion. So that's why this is such a massive deal. And again, I don't blame Fox for not wanting to split the pot, driving that price tag up as much as possible to try to cut ESPN out.
Yeah, and something that I did not get to talk about with Mike, and I fully intended to, profit sharing for players. Mentioned by Jim Harbaugh, actually a couple of regents at Michigan. And Jim Harbaugh has said it. I don't have a problem with any of this. Here's my question though. Where does it end for the player? I mean, how much are they going to end up getting? Now, when do these scholarships start turning into taxable income?
Right.
Why and why not? Why is it not now? If they're allowed to make that kind of money that they're going to potentially be allowed to make, how do they not tax scholarship, lodging, room and board, food, medical care, travel, equipment, which you're not going to? That's part of being on the team like an NFL athlete, but.
I don't know
all income, and I think a scholarship's got to be considered an income at that point. If you're into profit sharing,
I don't know enough legally. I don't know if a scholarship would be taxable, but I don't know.
Back in the day it wouldn't have been, but everything is changing. I'm going to get a
something is. I mean, there's going to be some major changes that, look, obviously student athletes making money is not a bad thing, but I think that there's going to be some negatives that come out of this. And a lot of that's going to be with taxes, I've talked about, there's going to be some shady business people out there. There was a story, and I don't know if this was true or not, and I can't give proper credit, so I apologize. But I saw on social media that there was Jordan Addison, who transferred from Pitt to USC, the Biletnikoff winner last year. He transferred, and there was estimations that he was going to make a lot of money if he transferred to USC. And apparently there has not been a delivery on some of those offers, some of those promises. So that's the kind of stuff you're going to deal with. I mean, anybody can say anything, but it's just part of the whole new world. What's going to be interesting is Kevin Warren sat down with Sean Clifford and some of these other football players and talked about, the potential of sharing some of that media money, especially at over $1 billion. But what's going to be interesting is that going to be just for football and basketball student athletes? Is it going to trickle down to all student athletes? How is that going to work? How is the conference going to navigate that? Because you're going to run into some serious issues. I'm sure there's going to be some Title IX concerns if it's only going to be football and basketball. I don't know how any of that works, but there's going to be a lot of issues if they start profit sharing in terms of the media deal.
Here's my issue. Why should it be profit sharing for every sport? Why? And feel free to hit up the comments. I don't care if it's men's or women's sport. Why should every sport benefit when the money is being brought in by two sports? I mean, soccer probably doesn't pay for itself. I doubt very seriously soccer pays for itself even, and that is the third biggest attended event. Baseball doesn't pay for itself. With the exception of maybe through the BTN TV money.
Well, BTN, right? They've started broadcasting more baseball, softball, volleyball.
Well, I get that, but who's really watching every single of those? Some of the softball is popular, volleyball very popular. I think baseball very popular.
I think the volleyball is very popular. I think even just a regular season match, I think is very popular.
Well, in the Big Ten it is, because the Big Ten is the best in the country. But
I think
at the end of the day, that's stretching it right there to those sports. Okay, but they still are a pimple on the butt. They're not even a pimple on the butt of football in the conference, which is then behind. Basketball is behind that. And then, well, you can forget it. It's everybody else is just down there somewhere. But John's telling us we got to take a break. Don't forget our good friends from Remax Realty. If you're in the market for a home in the Indianapolis area, make sure you reach out to Cheryl Sizemore. Her 2 decades of experience could be the difference between you getting the home you want and not. Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. I've got a golf event coming up with Mybor with them here soon. See, that's what you're missing out on, all these events. If you're in southern Indiana, Floyd, Clark, Harrison counties down by Louisville or in Louisville, Barbara Pop Realty Services has been serving that area for 3 decades, and they have you more than covered. Reach out to Matt Lincoln, Matt at barbarapop.com. We're back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Whether you're visiting Bloomington. Boy, here we go. All right. So, yep. I don't know how it doesn't go there.
What was that topic you all were discussing while I was out for most of that? I just want to make sure I have it included if it was something big. What was it?
Basically revenue sharing type stuff.
Yeah.
Within the universities?
Well, yes. By conference schools. But see, that's just going to piss off the football players, because they're like going, we're getting 1/6 of the money that we're the football players at Michigan, they're not going to be happy. And I understand that. That's just and I'm going to say, I'll save this argument, but that's like being at a factory and being the guy that shovels all the freaking coal, and you're riding on the back of the train and you're waving at the people as it goes by. No, that's not
well,
it's
I
not
agree.
equal.
But I don't know how Title IX would play into that. I legitimately don't know.
Well, see, Title IX is for something else. That's to make sure that they get the opportunities. They've got the opportunities. The sports are there. Everything. The facilities are laid out. They have all the opportunities they want. They have as many opportunities to go get NIL deals. The opportunities are there. So Title IX should have nothing to do with this. This is who's generating what. And it goes to the same argument that the women make on the women's national soccer team. They're popular.
Right.
But the rest of the women around the world aren't popular. And guess what? It's based on the TV rights that are for the women's program. Chronic Hoosiers in the house.
What's going on?
How's it going, brother?
I apologize for the delay in getting here today. You ever start a computer and then it immediately goes like into an update mode? Nothing forever.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
That's where we are today, but we are finally booted up. So glad to be back.
You are right on time. We are coming back from break right now.
Your door with AndyMooreHonda.com.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Woo, yeah, a little funky blues or something there. John picked up. I don't know where he found that, but appreciate it. Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat, of course, brought to you by our good friends at Andy Moore Honda, the number one Honda dealer around. You can get a new Honda Pilot or Passport with 1.9% APR financing. Woo! They got the new 2023 Honda HRVs in there, too. Those look awesome. Welcome in, Chronic Hoosier. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Glad to be back.
Glad to have you. Something I did not get to talk with Mike DeCourcy about earlier. A lot of talk about profit sharing. Some regents at Michigan, Jim Harbaugh talked about it, I think, at Big Ten Media Days when I was there. And I get it, but Dustin and Schutte and myself were talking about, I don't know how that with Title IX, if that's going to potentially be an issue. How do they get around that? Then you've got, if they're going to start doing that, now are you going to start taxing scholarships and all that goes along with being a scholarship athlete? There's just a bag of worms that I think the students might want to be careful as they tread down this path, because it's not all golden leprechauns that's going to be coming at them.
It's a fascinating time right now with so much influx in college athletics. And I don't know that college athletics that we speak so nostalgically about. We have long left that port. That ship set sail a long time ago. Everything now is out in the open, though. I mean, we have long operated for decades in what was likely a pay-for-play scenario. Now with NIL and everything being up front, it's just open. It's the same game that's always been played. It's just being done in broad daylight. But what's happened that's significant, that continues to push this thing, in light of all the losses the NCAA has taken and all the battles to preserve this notion of amateurism, the whole time they've cried poor. And what's happening concurrently now is they're continuing to hold on to those arguments about not being able to pay the players, as we saw just last night with the news of CBS's rights for just the 3:30 time slot for Big Ten football. Being valued at $350 million. That's just one component to the new Big Ten media rights deal that's imminently being announced, it would seem. That argument that there's just not enough money, it was ludicrous when it was first made, a decade plus ago. It's even more ludicrous now. Now, are there going to be ramifications, as far as, tax implications, as far as just scrapping the notion of amateurism outright for football and basketball? Probably. I mean, at this point, probably. We are probably still in the middle of a metamorphosis where what we've always known to be at least revenue generating college athletics becomes something entirely divorced from the amateur model, from the conference model that we've known. Who knows where this is going to land in a couple years, in 5 years, in 10 years, but it's not going to be anything remotely close to what we've known in the past. So yes, I think profit sharing, or however you want to term it, pay for play is very much here. It's at the doorstep right now. It's not going away. I think we know that. And even though Congress is now belatedly signaling that they're going to attempt to legislate some guardrails around NIL, the courts have consistently said throughout, This is simple economics. There's antitrust involved here. Whenever you try to cap anything, there's really, their hands are tied as far as what they can do other than embrace a radically different model that likely involves paying players simply for participating in what we currently know as college athletics.
Well, and I've talked about this at length, and I know it's a stale argument, but at this point, like it's gotten to the point where if the NCAA, they were just so stuck in like the 1960s, if there would have been gradual improvements made, if there would have been changes to the rule book, we probably are not in this situation where we're seeing such rapid change in the span of 2 to 3 seasons. We're probably seeing, I'm not saying we're not at the point we are now, but I'm saying there would probably be guardrails in place. You'd probably see things with the transfer portal or transfer windows or whatever the case might be. Like you go back to the stuff where a recruit could have a player could have a bagel, but they couldn't have cream cheese. That kind of silly stuff that the NCAA just refused to update its manual, update its proceedings, and now it's just been this tidal wave. And you're right, we're going to see a different college athletics, but I mean the NCAA has nowhere to point but itself.
Absolutely. And I think because, Jim, you mentioned the Title IX implications, that's probably going to be the determining factor that drives it outside of the current purview of NCAA regulation. They're going to have to create something that separates them from those constraints, because Title IX, it's federally legislated. That's a law. You can divorce yourself from that by creating a new organization that's no longer governed by that law. And that's probably the only route that they're going to have. Whether that involves just simply licensing the name, image, and likeness of the university that team purportedly represents or is aligned with, maybe seems most likely at this point. But it's going to have to be something entirely different from what we currently know. And that may or may not include academics as part of the package. There may even be an option. You join this club, if you will. Maybe if you're a reserve player, there's a component of an academic compensation. Maybe it's just completely separate from the academic institution entirely. But that's what professionalism is. So who knows where it takes us? But it's probably going to end up with money in their pockets.
Absolutely, and it makes me wonder though, where are we going to go? And that also adds to the possibility of Notre Dame. It really, I think they're an enigma. They want to keep that independence, but yet there's no way that they're not going to be giving up, I think, up to $75 million if they do not end up joining the Big Ten when this is all said and done.
Yeah,
per year.
There's a lot of programs that have a very passionate interest in remaining where they are currently, and all that's going by the wayside week to week. It seems like conferences that we literally labeled them power conferences. In this brave new world of media rights, we see exactly which conferences have power and which ones don't. And even the preeminent schools in some of those Big 12, Pac-10 programs, they're completely powerless to the winds of change. They either get on board or they get left behind. And I think most administrators, no matter what they're saying in the media days opportunities right now, are perfectly aware of that reality and trying to find a safe harbor before the dust settles in this thing, and we get left with the haves and the have-nots in these super conferences. Notre Dame's obviously a jewel in that collection to be had, but I think the same forces that are literally destroying conferences right now, that are massively reshaping the college landscape, very much apply to Notre Dame. And when you see like the CBS contract yesterday, Notre Dame feels really small in comparison right now to some of the numbers that are out there, and there's no way they want to get left behind on that boat. And there's no way they get anywhere remotely close remaining as an independent, quite frankly.
Dustin?
Well, and I think too, I mean, a lot of people talk about the tradition of Notre Dame and some of these games that they've played in the past, but I think, I mean, Notre Dame has shown in the past they have no issue with cutting ties. I mean, they ended the rivalry games with Purdue, Michigan State. So I don't think it's that big of a leap, especially if you still have a non-conference schedule. As Jim mentioned earlier when we were talking about Mike DeCourcy, you can still play. You can still play the service academies, and obviously now you can play USC and UCLA. I mean, so there can be some sort of rotation. I think it's just a matter of time before Notre Dame is going to join the Big Ten. I don't know whether that's 2 years or whether that's going to be 12 years, but I think at some point Notre Dame is going to be in a conference because the separation between keeping their independence and joining the Big Ten financially is just going to be too big of a divide for them not to jump on.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a huge money loss. Actually, like I said, if this conference goes to a value of 125 million with UCLA and USC, it's just going to continue to go up. But that's that. Speaking of football, Chronic, week 1 is underway of camp. We know little to nothing about the offense, and we will continue to know little to nothing about the offense. Met with running backs coach yesterday, Sean Shivers, those guys. But there's just a lot of questions with this program, and I understand the secrecy because to me, their season relies on that very first game with Illinois. They have to win the very first game. Otherwise, those other 11 just got way tougher. So they want to give them 0, which I'm not sure what they could get because you've got a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback in that room, new running backs in that room. There's so much new. I'm not sure what they could even get. But I understand there's a lot of pressure on Tom Allen.
Yeah, there's no doubt. This is I hate talking in hyperbole when it comes to make or break or do or die. This is certainly not what we would traditionally from the start of the season. If Tom Allen doesn't make a bowl, he's fired. We're nowhere near that. I think Tom Allen still has plenty enough goodwill that he's safe in the job for now. All that being said, last year was massively disappointing on a number of different levels. Whether or not he's able to turn the page, I think will shape the narrative of his remaining career here at IU this season. I don't think it's going to be the determinative season, but I think this is the pivot point for the season. Whether he's able to get it turned around or whether or not the disappointment lingers. I don't know that Illinois is necessarily the make or break game for the season, but it sure does a number on fan engagement, on enthusiasm, just on momentum in general. To have a Big Ten game on a Friday night in September, it's a later start. It's an odd start for a night game in conference on a Friday night. With 2 very winnable games following, you can either head to Cincinnati 3-0 with a whole lot of optimism and a probably, I don't know that it'd be a complete erasure of the memories of last season, but it would go a long way to help fans forget that and help remind fans why they want to show up to Memorial Stadium when the weather starts to get not as nice. That said, you very well could go in there with a lot of doubt and skepticism, having dropped a winnable home opener, and who knows what happens on the road at Western Kentucky. Nevertheless, though, I think it would be a massive, massive missed opportunity if Indiana's not able to capitalize on a win that game, because that very well at the balance of the season could determine whether or not Tom Allen's talking about bowl eligibility or whether or not we're talking about a second season where the Hoosiers just failed to meet that expectation.
Well,
Dustin, when I talk about them winning that game, if they win that game, they have the opportunity to start the season 4-0. Even though that game at Cincinnati will be tough, they'll have momentum. If they're at that point, they will have momentum and obviously playing well enough to have a shot in that game, which would be a gigantic difference. You lose that game, it just changes a lot of things for me.
Well, last year I would have pointed to the Iowa game and said, I thought going into the season, we all thought that was a very winnable game for Indiana. Obviously, that did not play out the way many of us had thought. But you also believe that if Indiana lost that game, it wasn't the end of the season. It was not a division opponent. It was week 1. There was plenty of time. There was plenty of meat left on the schedule to turn things around and get back to bowl eligibility or be competitive in the Big Ten East. Usually I would agree with Chronic's point that the first game of the season may not be the make or break point, but the way I look at it is if you can't beat Illinois, then who on the schedule are you going to be able to beat?
Yep. Now,
Yeah,
when you look down the schedule and what games does Indiana have a reasonable chance of winning, especially once you get into the conference portion of it, Illinois has to be at the top of that list. So to start the season with them, there's only so many games that I think the average fan would, or the neutral fan rather, would consider IU competitive in, and to bank those 4 games early, even 3 games early. You know, I mean, I'm literally just getting done with a session with our financial planner, talking about college investments for my kids, and just having reiterated the importance of getting those deposits in early, because the dividends they pay off late is so much larger. And for an Indiana team that could go potentially 4-0 in September, you would be putting so much in the bank for the balance of the season. I think it's just from the health of the program, to know that they've got a little bit of cushion, and to take some of the weight of this season off their shoulders. Because honestly, there's got to be a recognition, even though nobody's willing to acknowledge it within the locker room. There's a lot at stake this season for this team, and I think a lot of those guys are invested in its success. But they have to know just how badly they need to rack up some wins, and there's 4 perfectly winnable games before the degree of difficulty gets far, far more difficult for them.
Yes, it does, sir. And then basketball season is going to be a little quicker than people realize, but a couple of hits on the recruiting trail here of late. Jamie Kaiser ended up going to Maryland. TJ Power not including Indiana in his final 5, but that's not to be concerned. There, like I talked about earlier, there are a ton of offers out there, and I think they're in great position to land Arrington Page still, which the recruiting is. I think fans think that Indiana's going to get everybody that they go after, and it's just not the case. There are other programs that are having been successful last season and the season before and the season before that. So it's still going to be a tough road to hoe, but as the progress is seen, that's going to continue to get better for Indiana.
Yeah, that's the nature of the beast. You've got to be able to close the deal. You got to be able to cash those checks, and you're obviously not going to be able to close every single deal. It's a volume business. I mean, quite honestly, you have to spread your affections far and wide in order to find the right matches. And quite honestly, you lose far, far more than you're gonna land. Now, part of it's just the way that we cover it, the attention that they bring. Part of it, I think, is there's still very much a recognition, or there perhaps a lack of recognition, where Indiana is as far as the national stature, when you've got programs like UNC and Duke that are courting kids and prioritizing those kids. This is a program that's made a lot of strides in relatively short order of getting itself back into the national conversation. All that said, they have no disillusions here. It's still Indiana. They've still got a lot of obstacles in front of them. So, I'm not saying this or that about where, what the tea leaves are reading right now, but recognize when you're talking about some of these top 50 kids, Indiana is not always going to be and everybody at the top of everybody's list. So take it all with a grain of salt, and pay attention to those kids whose checks do get cashed, because that's where your future is going to be invested. And they've done pretty good so far, I think. So we'll see where it goes as the recruiting season continues to wind on. But recognize too, it's still early in the season, and there's a whole lot of recruits left to be landed.
Go ahead, Dustin.
I was going to say, not only is it early in the recruiting season, there's also still early in the Mike Woodson era. So when you have so many players coming back like Indiana does, returning talent, I mean, we talked, the other day about Jake Kaiser committing to Maryland, and there might be some promises there where he gets early playing time. And that doesn't seem to me to be the way Mike Woodson operates. He wants everybody to be competitive. He doesn't want to guarantee any minutes or any time on the floor. So I think if Indiana continues its upward trajectory, the way I've heard about Mike Woodson, the way he recruits, the way he connects with families, the way he's kind of establishing those pipelines, I think this year, if Indiana's successful, takes that next step, finishes in the top 4 of the Big Ten, gets back to March Madness, is a prominent national, I don't want to say power, but back in the national spotlight, I think the recruiting is going to take care of itself.
Yeah, and one thing that gets lost in recruiting, when players have already had a visit, they've probably had a chance to run with the current team, or at least a decent portion of it. For kids that are being recruited at that level, they're generally looking for a place where they can go make an immediate impact. They want to be seen. What gets lost in that is oftentimes that's an assessment from the recruits that perhaps that's not the best path forward for me because there's kids already on that roster that are better than I am that I'm going to have a hard time stealing minutes from. So take it for what it's worth. But there's a lot to be said from who says no and why. That's probably favorable to your team at the same time.
Looking forward to it, man. What are you going to be able to get out to and tailgate at all this year? Or, the big tailgating game on Friday night for Indiana's opening game that you mentioned. Different time, different night. I know that will affect some of the high schools. They probably have the game by then, I'm sure. But it's going to be interesting to see the crowd come out on a Friday night and starting the season with a conference game as well. Hopefully they get the support because they're frankly going to need it.
No, absolutely, and that's one thing that you can always count on, no matter what the prognostication is for the football team. Early season games at 17th Street are always some of the best times of the year. So to have one on a night game, Friday night, I think it's going to be epic. But I'll tell you what, you talk about tailgating. I'm looking forward to making it a little further east on 17th Street this year with some cold brews flowing now at Armstrong Stadium. For the first time. So a program that traditionally holds one of the better tailgates, people just don't recognize it over at the Supporters Club, at the soccer parking lot up on the hill there. Big news yesterday that they're going to start selling beer for men's and women's soccer. Don't know that we're going to see it anytime soon at Assembly Hall, but it's a step in that direction. That?
We talked about that earlier. Why is that? I mean, they've been selling beer at wherever Purdue plays, Mackey, for at least 3, maybe 4 seasons now.
Yeah, people like to cast Indiana University under a lot of different lights. One thing you can always count on, Indiana tends to be a little more conservative when it comes to all things Assembly Hall related. And I don't know that it's particularly one thing or the other. People talk about the proximity of the fans, and that may well be part of it. People talk about the slope of the stands. That may well be part of it. I think part of it is you're talking about the holiest chapel in all the land. And there's a lot of folks who probably feel like that's just a step too far in defiling the hallowed ground. So I don't know.
Certainly, they don't mind letting the folks with the dollars defile that ground.
No. There's a whole lot to be said there. For whatever reason, though, the powers that be still don't feel like the Indiana basketball crowd is responsible enough to enjoy a beverage while watching IU in Assembly Hall. So I don't know that lasts forever. My guess is that eventually goes away. I think it's just going to take time to perhaps allay some of those fears that have kept their prohibition in place over there. But it's soon becoming one of the last places that remains dry on this campus. So
install those beer taps and then bring in some handrails for the balcony, and then I think we're all good.
Yeah, no, just I'll tell you what, the guys in the red coats, just give them those little vending trays that they carry around their shoulders, and they can kill multiple birds with one stone.
Perfect.
Sounds Chronic. Cannot thank you enough, brother. Hope you have a great day and a great rest of the week.
Thanks for having me, guys. We'll catch you next week.
As always, Chronic Hoosier joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat, brought to you by our good friends from Andy Moore Honda, #1 Honda dealer around here. I forgot to mention Olivia Newton-John passed away yesterday. I remember her in Grease, and she had a couple of songs when I was a kid. I remember that.
Let's Get Physical. Wasn't that one of her songs?
Yes, it was. That was not one that came to mind. I'm glad to know that that's the first one that came to your mind, John.
It should be the first one that comes to everybody's mind, unless it's a Grease song.
That was like one of the first. She had the headband on. That was the 80s.
Yep.
What they call that when they were wearing the leg warmers on their shins? What do you call that? Aerobics? Was it aerobics?
I know what you're talking about. Dang it.
I don't know what they were doing, man.
Yeah, I know what you're. I'm gonna see if I can find it in the Google machine.
Let's see. Are we after a break? Did we miss a break?
Take it.
All right. We've got lots more coming up. We'll talk about more NIL, as David mentions here on this comment, getting the big IL money and lots more. Dustin Schutte with me, Jim Coyle back, brought to you by Andy Moore right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Whether you're visiting
Jazzercise.
That's what I'm trying to think.
Jazzercise.
I did that when I was a kid.
Boy, John, there are some things I just wouldn't say out loud.
You know, I think there's a difference between the generation that you're from and the generation that I'm from.
Oh,
we don't
yes.
give a crap about a lot of things that your generation does.
Oh, yeah.
Like also another one, like drinking White Claws and seltzers. You think that's embarrassing?
No, just the White Claw.
Seltzers are White Claws. Or the same
I understand it. I understand that, but White Claws have been adopted by the female generation.
They've been adopted by the younger millennials and older generation Z.
You freaks.
That's right. We've also seemed to adopt Bush Light for some reason. I don't know why.
That is
Bush Light. That's my age.
Well, it's cheap. It's cheap. There that.
If you can't make fun of yourself on the radio, there's no
got
point
that.
in doing it.
You got that right.
Or on YouTube, for that matter.
Damn. So what the hell? Gee whiz.
Life is too short for cheap beer, is what Jennifer says.
That's true.
Well, there is something to be said for that. When I was in high school, you know what our beer was? Old Milwaukee Light.
Whew. My great grandpa loved Milwaukee's Best. The Beast,
Yep.
is what they call it, right?
Yep. My dad drank Sterling, and my friends' dads drank Fall City, the original Fall City, not this new good stuff they got today. This was back when it was what you call rot gut beer.
That sounds terrible.
It is, because it was terrible.
Rot gut.
You know, that was a whiskey. Used to be a whiskey saying.
Yeah, it really is. I stole it from that.
No, that's fine. I watched a documentary and I found out why they use that term.
I figured it just rotted your gut and made you sick.
Well, correct. It killed people, but it was because at the time they were not. It wasn't regulated, so there would be people would.
Hey, Dustin, if you're able, drop out and drop back in. You're kind of staticky. We're coming back.
This segment is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry in Sellersburg. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends from Reynolds Family Dentistry, where I'm headed tomorrow. Man, hate going to the dentist. even to see Dr. J, our good friend down at Reynolds Sellersburg. If you're down that way, right off of I-65 as well. Everyone needs that championship smile, and Dr. J gave it to you. Hope you're enjoying this cooler weather, man. I mean, I'm looking out. It's kind of like cloud cover. It's going to be awesome. Yesterday I said we were going to be meeting with Tom Allen, but that was incorrect. We will be today, and Walt Bell, the OC. During the season, Mondays are the normal pressers for those guys. So I guess during the camp, it's done a little differently, but there's that. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, it's not like you're going to get too much information. It's probably going to be a lot of the same, same stuff you got from media days anyway. So
it's yeah. You know, if you're writing a story, you can probably ask some questions about a player,
right?
But there's no
indication on what this team's going to look like.
Here's what I don't get. Let's say he names a starter. It's going to be Connor Bazelak.
Right.
What the hell is that going to do for what does that do for Illinois?
Nothing.
They're going to go back and watch some Missouri film running an offense that he's not running.
Well, I mean, it's that correct. And I mean, they're going to game plan. It's not like Jack Tuttle has played, but it's not like they're going to have to watch a ton of film on him, right? Like to me, it doesn't make much difference. You said you're probably going to watch some tape on Connor Bazelak to see what his strengths and weaknesses are, for sure. But at the end of the day, it doesn't make a lot of difference. He's running a different style of offense. Illinois is going to be focused more on Illinois than they're going to be on Indiana, in my opinion, because this is a team that's still growing, still building. So they're going to want to, as long as they take care of the football, if they can win the line of scrimmage, which the way they were moving teams last season on both sides of the ball, especially in the second half of the season, that's going to give them a great chance to win. So I guarantee you they're not nearly as concerned with what Indiana is doing as what the coaching staff in Bloomington believes.
I believe that. They have to worry about getting themselves improved.
Right.
And here's something else, too, I thought of. And I'm going to have to do some research. But in Tom Allen's 6 years as being the head coach at Indiana, I'm not sure if it's 4 or 5, but it's either one of the two of those. It's been 4 or 5 of the seasons. The quarterback going into the season, the quarterback's been unnamed. There cannot be. How do you have consistency offensively? Well, Indiana has not had offensive consistency. Maybe there's a reason there. You have too much indecision. That's just a thought, and I'm gonna, like I said, I need to research if it's. I guarantee it's been 4. It might be 5. I'd have to go back to the first 2 years.
You know, I also kind of wonder. I mean, I know he wasn't the world's best quarterback, but look at if you would have stuck with Peyton Ramsey, yes.
You know what? You would have been a marginal team.
Oh, okay. I don't know that they were any. Were they any better with Michael Penix?
But wait a minute, you mean last season?
No. Not that before, but they didn't.
Well, hell yeah, they were. They were 6-2. They should have beat. They could have beat Ohio State. Yes, they were better with Michael Penix that year. But
okay, but I've come to the look. I don't know, but that was. It seems like everybody that was good in that COVID year turned around and surprisingly good, then went back to their old selves, and the teams that were surprisingly bad went back to their old self. Michigan State 2-5, Michigan 2-4. Both those teams were. I mean, Michigan won the Big Ten last season. Michigan State won 10 games and was ranked in the top 10 for most of the season. I don't know. It's very weird. I don't know what the necessary quarterback competition is all about. I mean, this year it makes at least a little bit of sense because you've got a new offensive system. You want to see who runs that system the most effectively. But in the just name a starter.
Well, but that's been the case every year. You've had a new offensive system every other year. Well, not new. They went from Kalen DeBoer and left it for
so 3 years.
But just leaving it, Kalen DeBoer was not in that position, and it made a gigantic difference. So I just don't think you're not going to have offensive consistency when you consistently don't know who your quarterback is.
Well, and the other aspect of this too is we probably aren't talking about this nearly as much if Indiana could run the damn football, but they have not been able to do that at all.
Oh boy, that's another big issue, and I don't know that that's any better this year.
I don't think it is.
Why would it be better this year?
Exactly.
Who Sean Shivers is in there, but
it doesn't. They don't have any. Look, it's not, the problem is not the running backs. They don't have anybody to block for them,
30.
and while they have experience coming back on the offensive line, it's not great experience. So you
ran me out of time again.
That's my problem.
Hey man, I cannot thank Dustin enough. Of course, Mike DeCourcy, Chronic Hoosier, John the producer. Most importantly, thanks to you guys. If we didn't get to your comments today, I'm sorry. We will try to get to them tomorrow. Yeah, those leg warmers. Let's make sure we hit those back up. And we're going to start giving away our hats or visors at the end of this week. So we'll, oh my God, please don't say that, Little Kings. Yep, been another great day. Looking forward to doing it again tomorrow. Cannot wait. Tomorrow is Wednesday. That means Bob Kravitz, Kyle Nedenrip, or unless he's still off, and Rick Bozich. He's back. So it'll be a big day. Looking forward to it. Go out and have fun for yourselves. And until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports